Welcome to Gold's Garage. So we're not actually at Gold's Garage today, obviously. We're at Belmont Machine in London, Ontario. And if you've been watching my videos lately, particularly anything to do with my 406, with the AFR head issue, you've heard this name before, Bill Little, my good friend Bill Little. And if you live anywhere in Ontario or Michigan or Ohio and you're a drag racer, you know his name very well. He's a very accomplished, successful drag racer all over the area and engine builder. And Bill's at a different level than I am. I build street motors. Bill builds race motors. And when you build super stock engines, you have to deal with 1,000 little rules, how thick the rings can be and how big the valves can be and all that stuff. I don't have to deal with any of that stuff, thank you, thank God. So he does deal with that, and he's been very successful at building. I met Bill at Darrell Waters Dyno Service and saw some of the engines that he's dynoed, and they make crazy horsepower with all kinds of restrictive Chevrolet stock steel heads and so on. So I'll let him get into that in a minute, but the first topic we're going to discuss in this video, once again, is back to my 406 with the AFR heads, and if you followed it, there's been 2 or 3 videos already. I leak tested the heads before I installed them. I had a small amount of leakage. I talked to Skip White, the machine shop, and they told me to go ahead and use them. I did try that, and they still did, so I brought them to Bill, and Bill fixed them for me. He's an expert head guy. They do porting. Bill has his own flow branch, his own Spintron, and if there's anybody in London I would trust to fix them, that would be him. So thank God he did it for me. And by the way, they're back on the engine. The engine's running. As we make this video, the engine is we've already made a dyno with the engine running, and it's on the way to the dyno shop now. So it's all ready to go, and once again, the heads are all back on. But we just didn't get around to making this video, basically availability of Bill's time as much as anything. So we're here today, and so the first question is, what Bill's observations of the AFR heads, and what did he do for me to fix them and get him ready to put it back on the engine? So Bill, I'm turning it over to you. So
thanks for coming, Alan.
My pleasure.
So Alan brought me the heads, and I took them apart. And before we get into that, I just want to make it clear that they are the Enforcer AFRs. They're not the Eliminator. So they're made to compete with the Pro Max and the Chinese heads. So they are actually a copy of a Dart Pro 1 head. So what happened, AFR wanted to make a Chinese head. So they thought, we're gonna copy a Dart head. So they took a Dart head over to China, and China made them a copy of it, and they call it the Enforcer. So Dart heard of this, and then Dart took the Eliminator head from AFR, and they took it over and had their, I'm trying to think of it, SHP cylinder head made. So it's actually a copy of an Eliminator head. So those two companies are kind of sort of butting head to head a little bit. So it's kind of interesting, right? So anyway, I took the heads apart and I lapped the valves in, and the exhaust valves were way out. So I took my valve grinder and I tried to make a seat. And when I was finished with a seat that was round with the guide, I had an 1/8 of an inch on one side and a 1/16 of an inch on the other. So that's how far it was off. So then I had to narrow the top with a stone and then narrow the bottom to get the correct width of the seat. So the way I do that is so I don't use cutters, I use a stone. A cutter is nice because it does all the angles at once, okay? But you're limited to those angles. I can do any angle I want with a stone. And a stone being self-centering, it is actually more accurate to grind a seat if you know how to do it. But a lot of guys don't know how to do it. That's why the cutters have come into play. So with this machine right here, I can I can go from any angle from 0 all the way up to 90 degrees. And I have some special angles that I use. I don't go 15 degrees. Air will go around a 15-degree surface, around a curve that's 15 degrees, but I like to use 12 or 13 degrees between the angles, and it works really well on the flow bench. So that's one of my secrets right there. So anyway, I'm just going to show you when I dress a stone. So I'm going to set this at 45 degrees and get it right on there, perfect. And then I have this handy thing right here, and then there's a diamond tipped tool here that goes against the stone. So I put it in here like this, turn this up a little bit. And there's what you end up with, a nice perfect 45-degree angle. These tool holders are, they have bearings all the way up in here. They're very accurate. And then when I do so when I put this in the head, I don't have I can maybe show you in this head right here. Let's see if I can find the right one here. So basically the tool fits in the guide like this. There's all different sizes, so you can make sure this is tight. What I do with all my pilots, I grind a notch on here, so I can put it in the guide in the same spot every time. Even a half a thou out here is going to change that valve seat. So I do that so it's exactly the same every time I do it. So you put this in here, and then they have a spring. So this is an anti-bounce spring they put in here. So when you're doing the angle, it's under tension, and it actually makes a lot nicer seat, and it stops the stone from bouncing off the seat. Okay, and if you didn't have that spring, you wouldn't do a very good job of the valve seat. Now these stones come in all different. There's gray, there's blue, there's red. They're all for different seats. Stellite, hardened seats, beryllium, cast iron, of course. The gray one's for cast iron. That's a fine one. They also make a coarse one also. So anyway, when you do the valve job, you go in with a stone, you do the valve job, and then the seat you'll be able to see the seat, and then you use. Now I think I have some here. So that was a 45 I just showed you. And then this is a 33, and you can still see the aluminum from Alan's heads on there actually. So that's the top cut. And then I use two angles for the bottom. So I use a 57, and then I use a 75, and that gives you the four angle valve job. But it's that one and the 57 that actually narrows the seat to where you want to. So the AFR heads had a seat roughly 50 thou wide. They don't use very wide seats in them anymore. So, but the seats were out quite a bit on the exhaust. I lapped them in afterwards, and they sealed pretty good. And I lapped the intake valves. The intake valves were okay. There was no problem with the intake valves. So now Alan did think he had a problem, and he brought them back, and I put solvent in some of the ports, and there was a couple intake valves. The exhaust valves all held solvent. A couple intake valves didn't hold solvent, so I relapped them, and they were fine. It's on the motor now, and Alan's ready to dyno it. So, I'm looking forward to that. I'm going to go out on the 14th and see how things are going. Okay, so
you can help me tune it, Bill.
Okay, I will.
Yeah.
I will.
Yeah,
Maybe you can show me something too.
Well, we'll see.
So, anyway, that's the valve grind equipment. Now, if you just come this way.
Okay, welcome back. So Bill's just covered off everything he's doing to the seats and the head. So now he's going to show you how he takes care of the valves. Before we forget, please like and subscribe. We just passed 5,000 last week. We're over 5,100 and we're growing. And we need you to help us because there's no point in making videos if you don't have subscribers. So you can help me by subscribing. It doesn't cost anything. And if you're at it, give me a like too. We'd really appreciate it. So we're back to Bill again. He's going to show you now how he takes care of the other part of the valve seat issue, and that's by taking care of the valve. So go ahead, Bill.
I have an old valve here. I don't know, I think that was a 1.6 out of something, maybe a Pontiac or something. I forget what it was. So this is my valve grinder. And I can change the angle. Now everything's pretty dirty right now. I haven't cleaned this for a while. But it goes from 0, and I made it go all the way up to 50 degrees here. So I can do any valve angle. It's 15, 19 and a half. I got it all marked for 20, 21, 32, 33, 34. So I can change the valve angle, the back angle of the valve, and flow it. And you would be surprised, you'd really be surprised how much a couple degree back cut on a valve can make a big difference to airflow numbers. So I'm going to grind this one to 45. We got 44 here. We have 45 right there. Lock it down tight. I'm going to turn her on. Make sure this chuck is set. Put this on. Make sure the valve's tight in there. Okay, so got to move this back. So I got a little bit of a problem with my grinder here. It doesn't want to always turn the switch on, so I got to move back there and do it. We're going to bring this up close to the stone until it just touches. We're going to put some cutting lubricant on it, and we're going to go back and forth here until we have a nice seat. Now this valve wasn't very good to start with, so I'm going to have to take a fair bit off. That's why it's a junk valve right now. So, and then I like to let it they call it spark out, so that it's all done cutting. We back her off here. We're going to pull it out and have a look at it. Get my rag to clean it up here. And there's a nice 45 degree seat on the valve. Now if you just think about it, why wouldn't you want to grind a valve seat if you're grinding a valve? That makes sense to me. You cut it with a cut, you want to cut the head with a cutter, and you grind the valve with a stone. That doesn't make sense, but anyway, so at this point I would take the valve, the seat's already done in the head. I put some valve lapping compound on it. I use it's Permatex valve lapping compound. So this is really old school stuff. It's actually mixed in oil, and it's very, very fine. And you put a little bit on the valve, all the way around the valve, and then you lap it with this lapping stick. It has a suction cup on it. And you move it back and forth like this, and it'll show you a real nice lap line where the seat is. So let's just say that seat was on the very outside edge. So then I would say, okay, we're going to cut this at say a 30 degree back cut. So we move the machine to 30 degrees. We put it back in the chuck. We bring her over here again, and what I'm going to do, I am going to do the back cut just to where the lap line would be. So it's imaginary right now, but I'll show you when we're all done. And usually when I do the back cut, I don't use any fluid because it's too hard to see. So we'll get the light up here. It might be a little bit hard to see this, but there's a back cut on there. You can actually see it if I hold it a different way. So that's a 30 degree back cut, 45 degree seat, 35 degree back cut. That's worth about at low valve lift up to 300. That could be worth 10 to 12 CFM just doing that, and maybe even up top it's worth some too. So that's what the valve grinder does. And I've had this machine since '85. I bought it brand new. I bought the valve grinder and this, and it was state of the art when I bought it back then. So anyway, it's done me well.
Thanks, Bill. It might be worth mentioning, this isn't just theory, because Bill also has a flow bench, so he validates his own work by putting it on the flow bench and basically proving that it does exactly what
It does, and sometimes it doesn't work.
So we know he knows what's going on in the end, and that's how these guys make crazy horsepower with stock engines, legally stock engines, I guess.
Yep.
Super stock engines with steel heads.
Low compression.
And low compression, and they still make more horsepower than I'm making with street motors with none of those limitations. So hats off to him. I've seen some of his motors on the dyno, and I can validate that for you. So
Thanks, Alan.
thanks for covering that off, Bill. And we're going to do more with Bill. He's got more to offer, but we're going to cut this part of the video at this point, and we'll go from here. Bill Little, I've already introduced him, so you know him by now. We talked about on his valve grinding machine and his head machine, how he sets the valve angles, and he mentioned that making this back cut can give you a 10 CFM or 12 CFM.
Yep.
And so the question was, what the heck does that mean? Why is it important? And how do you know if he really gets 10 or 12 CFM? So the next stage of the video, we're now at Bill's flow bench. And today he's just going to kind of show you how he does the setup. There's not a head on it right now, but one of the things I did when I came here was left Bill another head to fix. So if you watch Mike Kimball's build, the budget build that we did, and he used steel heads, we've decided to put aluminum heads. I have a set of fast burn Chevrolet aluminum heads off a 604 crate engine. ZZ6 is the same head. They're really nice heads, but a couple of valves that need Bill's attention, so we came to left him here. And one of the ways of working this around is he's a pretty busy guy, but to motivate him, make the next video, he's got to fix my head for me, because I'm coming back next week to get it and make the video. So next week, he's going to show you how the machine works today. Next week, he's going to flow my ZZ6 aluminum cylinder head. So that sets it up for us. Like and subscribe, please. Don't forget that. I'm going to turn it over to Bill. Take it over, Bill.
Okay, so we ground a back cut on this valve. Now this is an exhaust valve. And what the back cut does, if you can imagine this up against the seat, and if we didn't have the back cut on there, the valve would have to open further before it could get past the seat. So the back cut actually opens more of the valve area up at lower valve lift. And at higher valve lift, by having an angle on the back, it is more contoured, so the air can get around the seat easier and out the port. Okay, so that's why we back cut the valve. Now to verify this, we put the head on here. We put light valve springs on here. The head's bolted down. This is for an Oldsmobile right here. I have a small block Chev one we'll put on the next one, on the next video. This bolts onto the head, and it has a micrometer, and I can open the valve 50 thou or 100 thou at a time in increments, so it's very accurate, so it's the same every time. And that's the biggest thing about flowing a cylinder head, is you have to make sure it's the same every time you put the head back on here. So I have this plate right here. It slides back and forth, and I can start, say, on number 2 cylinder, and then I can slide it over one, and there's an O-ring in here that seals it, and then I tighten this back up, and then I can move my mic over to the next one and do it, and so all the way through the head. Okay, once I get the exhaust or the intakes all done, or the exhaust all done, I'll go back and do the intake valves the same way. But this slider makes it so much easier, and it saves a lot of time. So this flow bench, when I ordered it, it also has what they call a swirl meter. And swirl is very important, and I don't think you guys will see very much of this on the internet about what is good swirl and what isn't. But the next video, we're going to show you what's good and why some swirl is good and more swirl may not be so good. So that's the next video, and it'll be next week sometime when I get Alan's head done. We have, so this is all automatic, and it has what they call, this flow bench has depression control, so it only flows as much as it needs to flow, so it doesn't run wide open all the time. When the valve gets open further, the vacuum motors start to work harder, but it saves on vacuum motors by having a depression control in it. So this shows me the flow, the actual flow, the depression. So usually we flow at 28 inches. This flow bench will go up to 40. I wish when I bought the flow bench, I had got 2 more vacuum motors and I could have gone up to 60 inches of vacuum. Because you see some things at 40 and 60 you don't see down lower. So this shows the lift. This does not work because there's something in the computer program that won't allow me to work it. So I have the temperature. The temperature is important. And then I also have what they call a pitot tube. And what this does, it measures airflow speed. And basically you have a tube inside of a tube, believe it or not, and it's really hard to see, but there's a hole right in the very end of it here. And then you have 2 holes. You have a hole here, and there's a hole on the other side. And it measures the pressure difference and gives you airspeed in feet per minute. And this is critical too, because there is special, well, I shouldn't say special, there's a certain airspeed you need in a port if you want to make torque and horsepower, and we'll discuss this next time. It gets a little bit complicated, but I'll try and explain it the best that I can. Okay, so I can switch from intake to exhaust here just with a flip of a switch, and it makes it very, very easy to do that. What else here? I guess that's pretty much it for now. I have different ranges here. It has range 1, range 2. I only use the second range, so up to a certain point I use range 1, and then over a certain airflow I have to switch it to range 2. So there's a lot going on when you're flowing ahead. So, and port sound is important too, so we'll discuss that. It's not just all about, you can have airflow and a port that sounds gurgly and that port won't be happy. It won't make power. So anyway, that's the flow bench.
So, hey, awesome job, Bill. So you heard me say on my channel, I'm learning too. Well, I learned a ton today because this is above my level. I've always depended on guys like Bill to do this kind of stuff for me, and I've never seen the demonstration that he's done. Thanks very much for an awesome job.
You're welcome.
And this is just an introduction. We're going to do more stuff with Bill. He also has a Spintron. We're going to come to that in a later video and talk about that. But hopefully by a week from today, I'm going to come back and pick up my fast burn head, and he's going to have it on the bench, and we're going to use my head to demonstrate it. And that head's going on Mike Gimbel's budget build 350, by the way. So I've got it apart already. I already put one of the other heads on. It was fine, but one of them needed some work on the exhaust valve, so that Bill's going to do that for me. We'll see you on the next video. Thank you very much for helping me out, Bill.
You're welcome.
Awesome. You did a great job.
Thank you.